आज आमच्याकडचे पण येत आहे सर, एक डॉक्टर सोलंकी आहेत ना, IIT.
सोळंकींचं काम ते याचं ना,
सोलर हा, सोलर
solar.
वाला. तर त्यांची ती एक सोलर यात्रा बस आलेली आहे.
हो हो हो.
आणि ही इज नाव गोइंग टू ऍड्रेस द फॅकल्टी ऑल्सो.
गुड गुड. किती वाजता आहे ते?
11:15 आहे सर.
अरे बाप, मग कसं काय आपलं हे
पण आता काय, हे आपण फिक्स केलं होतं, ते त्यांचं कालच झालं. तर तिथं पण आहे
He has done over 90 research publications and book authorship, as well as he is the editor of Arthasambad. We are indeed honored to have you with us today as a guiding source of light. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are overwhelmed to introduce our very own CA Dr. Tejinder Singh Rawal, sir. He has always been the source of knowledge and inspiration for all of us. His firm, T.S. Rawal and Company, is running successfully for the past 35 years. He is the author of Loads of Money Guide to Intelligent Stock Market Investing Common Sense. He has a vast educational background. He is a CA and has done MCom, MA in English, Economics, Public Administration, Urdu. He has also done LLB, FCA, ISA, CISA, CISM, PhD. Sir, we cannot foresee a more perfect person to explain the minute details of budget. We welcome you, sir. We are profusely overjoyed to introduce our panelist, Mr. Sanjay Phadke, sir. He is a fintech specialist, health tech mentor, and author. He is a member of International Telecommunication Union and currently working with Vienna Network as EVP head. He is the author of the book Fintech Future, The Digital DNA of Finance. He has completed AMP from the Wharton School University of Pennsylvania and MMS in Finance and JVIMS after completing his BE in Mechanical Engineering. He has volunteered for many national and international organizations. We are indeed honored to have you with us today. We welcome you, sir.
Thanks.
We are blessed to have you all, and we hope that your immense knowledge in your respected field will help the students to gain the clarity on the implications of the union budget. Thank you all for joining us. Now I call upon our head of department, Dr. Rupesh Payas, sir, to share his thoughts.
Yes, thank you, Pooja. On behalf of Department of Management Technology, I welcome the esteemed panelists for today's budget discussion. I also welcome my colleagues and all the students, those who are watching this particular event. In fact, we all know this Arthashastra is a two-part series which we started since the inception of our department, where the first part is where we stream online the budget speech by Finance Minister, and second part is this particular analysis by the experts. Before I welcome our today's guest formally, I must confess that my interest and understanding towards budget and budget related aspects has grown because of this event only. And thanks to these two gentlemen, which we are going to join, has already joined this session, Dr. Vinayak Deshpande and Rawal sir. In fact, I was typically engineering faculty teaching coding, and हमें हमेशा लगता था ये तो फाइनेंस वालों का काम है, लेकिन जब भी हम लोगों को सुनते थे, that actually make us understand the concept, and I feel that because of that understanding, the interest aroused. And this is what I'm going to guarantee you all students on the behalf of these experts, that this is what they are going to do with you people also. They are going to arouse the interest, and next time you will see that whenever you see that particular budget speech or any budget debate or analysis, you will have altogether different perspective and understanding. Once again, sir, formally, I welcome Dr. Deshpande, sir. In fact, dear students, just for your information, sir has already been guiding our department since inception. He has been there since inception and guiding in curriculum and other aspects. In fact, Rawal sir has also helped us at individual capacity. Also, I remember many of our faculty members, they meet him personally and they learn so many things from there. So these are the two people, those are helping us. And in fact, as we were discussing before the start of this informal our discussion, that this is since inception we are doing, and these gentlemen are with us from last more than 15 years, if I'm not wrong. And today we are fortunate to add one more expert to our Ramdeva Parivar, and that is Sanjay Phadke sir. Sanjay sir, we welcome you to our Ramdeva Parivar, and as we say that once a person joins our Parivar, he remains there. So this is not going to be the first of its kind interaction, but yes, we are going to invite you again and again here. So, dear students, as we all know that budget is nothing but the government's plan, its vision, its priorities areas, and many other things which the government plans for its country and its governance. And we all know that there are events which are being affected, or there are events which are related with the budget. We are, or your business is a part of that remote environment, and those budget and budget related events either create some positive impact or sometimes they create negative impact. This is what we call the opportunities and the challenges. And you as a business manager, you cannot avoid this. This is part and parcel of your business paradigm, and it's part of your business environment. So you as a budding manager and you as a manager, you cannot say that I don't want to understand budget. It's optional. It is not optional. It is compulsion, because these events are going to affect directly or indirectly to your businesses, and this is what the opportunities and challenges you must understand. And this is the primary reason that we are conducting this particular program since long. And personally तो मैं अपना share किया है कि I had immense help from this particular event, and I also expect and I want you that you also take interest, ask as many as questions you are, and make sure that this particular interaction of 1 hour or more will be meaningful and fruitful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable words. Now, I call upon CA Prashant, sir, for being the moderator of today's session. I hand over it to you, sir.
Thank you, Pooja. Good morning, one and all. Deshpande sir and Raval sir have been with
Good
us
morning.
for
Good morning.
Arthashastra since, good morning, sirs. Deshpande sir and Raval sir have been with us since a lot of years now, elaborating the impact of budget on various sectors. This year, we also have Shri Sanjay Fadke, who will enlighten us about the current buzzwords, blockchain and crypto. These buzzwords have found place in the budget also this year. So we welcome you, sirs. Now let us begin without wasting any further time. I would like to ask, first of all, Vinayak sir, as has been our ritual, we always start with the opening remark by the panelists. Sanjay sir will also come to know about it. So Vinayak sir, we would like to hear from you in brief. What do you think about this year's budget?
Thank you, Prashant. Head of the department, Dr. Rupesh Pius, all my friends of Ramdev Baba College of Management, my friend Vikram Joshi, Parihar, I could see him. Abhijit used to moderate. Now Prashant has taken his charge, it seems. Good. We have Pooja Bora, Dr. Sunita Dhote, all the faculty members of Ramdev Baba. I always feel delighted to get associated with Ramdev Baba College, and it is always a pleasure to discuss with our students regarding budget. And this forum always gives me an opportunity to meet, interact Dr. Tejinder, and now we have Sanjay Fadkeji. So I look forward to listen to the comments of Dr. Tejinder and Fadke Saab. As far as budget 2022 is concerned, whenever budget is presented, it is like a tightrope walk for the finance minister. And it is really difficult to satisfy each and every section of the society. So middle class, they have their own perception regarding taxation. Corporate sector, they will look at the budget from their own point of view. Oppositions always criticize whatever the budget and the provisions are made. But as an academician, we try to analyze the budget absolutely in an unbiased manner. Whatever the provisions which you find would be helpful to grow the economy, that we will appreciate. And there would be certain provisions which could be detrimental also for the development of the country. And therefore, when the budget is presented, what is important to see in which particular background and the challenges this budget is presented and how far this budget can address those challenges. So I'll just name certain challenges first. First is the considering the background of pandemic, it was at most necessary to increase the rate of growth of the economy, which was clashing down, and this growth was ultimately important to generate employment. So, employment generation, economic growth, and wherever you find that there is a scope for generating employment, what this budget can give to those sectors where there is a potential of generating employment. And the most important aspect was how to boost up demand, how to increase private consumption. So these were the basic challenges, and this is the budget which is presented after good amount of vaccination. And therefore, the expectation was slightly different compared to last year because we have now vaccinated society and vaccinated India. Another important difficulty is relating to Ukraine, Russia, the kind of problems going on, and that crisis obviously is going to affect the oil prices, and that is also the another important challenge. Rising inequalities, along with rising inequalities, higher rate of inflation and unemployment, these are the three basic things which required to be considered in the background of the provisions made in the budget. And therefore, we have to see how far really finance minister has succeeded in addressing acute unemployment problem, growing poverty, wealth and income inequalities, and accelerating inflation. How far she has succeeded in addressing these issues that need to be considered. And then whatever the provisions are made, will these provisions be adequate enough to solve these problems? That also we have to see. Of course, this budget, it is clubbed with railway budget also, and therefore when we look at the overall size of the budget, that size of the budget has definitely gone up. But then we have to see that considering the challenges and the problem, is this size of the budget adequate enough? And what are the big ticket items in the budget? And for these big ticket items, whatever the provision is made, is it adequate enough to again face the problems which I just talked about? Of course, there are certain positive sides of the budget where GST collection has increased beyond the expectation. Overall, tax collection, if you see, that has increased quite substantially, and that you can consider as one of the important aspects of the budget. Of course, when we look at the budget, we have to see what is going to be the direction of the country, and then the kind of strategy adopted by the government of India in order to achieve the fast growth rate. So details, if you consider, of course, during discussion, we will see how it can be analyzed. But this budget size, if you consider, it is 39 lakh crore budget. So that much is the amount which government is planning to spend in the coming year. But one has to remember that many people have criticized that in the background of the COVID pandemic, this is going to be the booster budget. That is what people were expecting. but I would say that it is not in real sense the booster budget which can really give boost immediately to the economy. Long term perspective given by the finance minister quite appreciable, but we have to see how far government is succeeded in solving the immediate short term problem and what is there for the medium term solutions. So this is the my take as far as the introductory part and the background of the budget is concerned.
Fortunately, this year, Corona has not been really helping us in connecting with the students in the physical world. But thanks to the platform, we are at least able to carry on with the events. And I look forward to meeting the new students when I come to the institution next. So thank you very much for inviting me here. And I would start uh, with slight positivity. And as Deshpande sir rightly said, just one second. My screensaver suddenly came on the screen. Yeah, and I'm happy that Sanjay ji is also there this time with us as a co-panelist. So I would start with a little bit of positivity, and as Deshpande sir said, we will not be mincing any word. We'll be calling a spade, and it's a non-political, purely economic discussion. So don't try to find any color in our speech. We are going to be, we are going to praise the finance minister when she has done something good, and we are going to criticize her if we find that something has not been up to our expectations. So let's get going. First, let's start with the state of the economy, where we stand today on the day in which the budget is presented, and the statistics are quite positive. So that's why I said let me start with the background first to tell you what kind of economy uh, we have at the point in which this budget is presented. See, at this point, according to the economic survey, the economy is estimated to grow at 9.2% per annum, 9.2% in 21-22, the current year, in real terms, which is huge. 9.2% growth is very, very high. And those of you who do not understand economics, as Rupesh has also said in the beginning, don't worry, we'll be explaining things in the clearest possible terms, and you're going to develop interest in this. I can assure you. So, economy is expected to grow at the rate of 9.2% in this year, which is perhaps the highest rate of growth in the world. There was a contraction of 7.3% last year. So we degrew, or there was a degrowth of 7.3%, or a negative growth of 7.3% last year. The year before that was also lost in a way that there was a negative growth. The GDP is projected to grow at the rate of 8 to 8.5% in real terms in 22-23. And according to the chief economic advisor and according to the finance minister, these are conservative estimates. So hopefully it grows at that rate. Of course, they have uh, given a lot of provisos here. Provided that the oil prices remain in control, provided that another wave of corona does not hit us, provided that the present wave of corona does not have a major impact, and so on. So, all things being equal, the economy is expected to grow at the rate of 8 and 8.5% per annum. And I was feeling that if some of these things do go wrong, they may go wrong. If they do go wrong, the growth rate would be lower, but still we would be among top three in the world, perhaps in terms of growth. So the year ahead is expected to pick up private investment. I'll be talking about this later. Uh, Private investment has been bad, and it has not been coming forward the way it should be. Government has been spending a lot of money on infrastructure, hoping that this would have a accelerator effect, and the private enterprise would also come forward and start investing, which has not happened. It is expected that during this year, perhaps, I mean, with so much of government spending and other measures being taken, the private investment would also come forward and the economic revival would take place. My take on this would be later, but this is what the government stand is. Agriculture and allied sector is expected to grow at the rate of 3.9%. See, agriculture is the only sector, and I and Vinayak Deshpande sir share a very special bond with agriculture. So whenever a question on agriculture is being asked, you will see us getting slightly sentimental. So this is the only sector which has grown at the rate of 3.9%, which has grown positive, shown positive growth during last 2 years. Other sectors of the economy like services and industries had a degrowth. They had a negative growth. Agriculture continued to grow in spite of bad state of the economy, and is expected to grow at the rate of 3.9%, which is quite a good rate of growth for the purpose for agricultural segment. On demand side, the consumption has been very low during last 2 years because of obviously because of pandemic and because of the fact that people did not have much money to spend. The government is expecting the demand consumption to grow by 7%, gross capital formation, fixed capital formation by 15%, and exports have grown very well during last 6 months. Uh, so government is expecting exports also to grow. Unfortunately, export growth has also come with a heavy import bill because of the rising petroleum prices and the fact that the petroleum prices may perhaps rise further because of the crisis situation that Vinayak sir already talked about. Uh, we had a very high tax collection during this period. GST was unprecedented during last month. 1.42 lakh crore rupees was unprecedented, was the highest ever. Gross tax collection during this from April to November of this year has uh, already cost 50% of the targeted figure. So we are likely to go beyond target. The collection is going to be very high. Tax buoyancy is good. Economy is seems to be growing. The concern areas, of course, as I said, calling spade a spade, I would be doing later. But at the moment, let us be very happy that the economy is well placed. It is growing. We have come back to the pre-COVID level in terms of most of the growth parameters. What happened 2 years back, delete those 2 years, and we are starting above that level in most of the parameters, except consumption and a couple of other parameters. So I think this is the state of the economy, and during the discussion, we take further on from here as we discuss further. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I believe the word positive has caused a lot of havoc in last 2 years, but let's begin with positivity.
Yes.
Now I ask Padke sir. Sir, please.
Thanks, Prashant, and also my co-panelists and the entire, faculty at the institute. First of all, for inviting me here, and good afternoon, all students who are a part of this event. This is the first time I'm coming here, and it's very nice to see the camaraderie between the group already, and feels nice to get back to an academic institution always. So great to be here. I think all of us read news, all of us have too much of information nowadays. So I'm not going to repeat any facts which are out there pretty much everywhere. Uh, and I think that some of those very relevant ones have already been adequately captured by Vinayak sir and Tejinder Singh ji. So let me just give my perspective on this, and I actually would hope that we do see a lot of discussions and, more importantly, also questions from students. And I would think that's really where we can make some discussion happen, and hopefully some new ideas come. Uh, so I think I'm also an engineer first, and then an MBA. So like Dr. Upesh, I also look at things a little bit more analytically. So I've spent a long time in financial markets. So if you look at financial markets, how they have responded to the budget, that kind of gives you some idea about how different parts of the economy are looking at the budget. So if you saw the stock market, they were neutral to slightly positive. If you saw the bond market, the yields went up because they thought that there is significantly higher borrowing program because of the additional budget outlays. If you saw the currencies, they were again relatively flat to slightly weaker for the rupee. These are obviously early days. A budget is like one single intention for the unfolds, and nobody knows how the year unfolds with all the uncertainties. And we've had too many uncertainties in the last 2 years to really plan in any meaningful way, I think. And many of the people have had severe dislocations in their families' health. A lot of people have lost livelihoods, and small businesses have bore the brunt. So it's hard to kind of while I think the aggregate numbers are good, obviously, as Vijender Singh ji mentioned, there are lots of unsolved problems as far as we are concerned. I think obviously we are growing, probably as he mentioned, one of the top three in the world, which is all great, and I think we are on the right path, but a lot needs to happen. So where does this budget take us in that long journey? And I think it does set out a good path from where we've been. So we've, in some sense, sort of been doing a transition from a very, very, hierarchical style of central planning style of economics to a far more data-driven and far more, interactive style of economic policy making. And I would probably add one big change that has happened in all this is the increasing role of technology, right, in everyday life and in everything that we see around us, including this call today, with which we are. I'm sitting here in Pune. Many of you are in, I guess, Nagpur, and maybe students are in their hometowns, spread all over. So this shows how technology has really been a great enabler, sometimes really a great savior as well, as what we are seeing right now. Sometimes a big problem as well, with too much of social media and so on, which I guess we would like to hear from students if they do so. But yeah, I think in some sense the budget sort of uses that technological changes to set the economy right. So I would say this is probably the first, in some sense, techno-economic budget rather than just an economic budget. There are at least some 7 or 8 very large technology-driven items that are there in the budget, starting from you talked about agriculture. There is something about creating unique land identification numbers. Again, continuing with agriculture, there are provisions for better monitoring of crops with drones and drone swarms, which also affect the defense side. On the other way, uh, there are many other initiatives on the health infrastructure, again, using something called National Digital Health Stack, which is another technology driven sort of a large objective. Obviously, India has been one of the leaders in the world in a couple of areas like online payments, etc. Catching up with China. China has been a big change in the last 20 years, and I think it's now, in some sense, and improving trajectory for India. And this budget shows many of those using right technology for public goods, creating digital public goods. How can we create a more equitable society, and how can we create, eventually, how can we get rid of poverty and many of those issues which still exist in a large way? How do we take from where we are about, I don't know where we are in terms of GDP per capita, 2000 plus, I guess, but how do we get to between $5,000 and $10,000? I think those are really what really matters, and I think using technology and data, I think, is one of the big change from past, and hopefully we are on the right path. So with those brief comments, let me stop here, and like I said, I hope to have a nice discussions and Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As you have mentioned, this is kind of techno-economic budget. Students have quite a few questions related to this. And I would like to tell the panelists as well as the fellow colleagues that all the questions that I'm going to ask are actually prepared. The entire session has actually been prepared by the students. I'm going to thank the students also at the end of session. So let's begin with the questions now. Sir Vinayak sir, let's begin with you. Since your name is also Vinayak, so let's begin with Vinayak sir.
Sure.
Sir, let us first of all talk about fiscal deficit, like estimating 6.4% in 22-23 and then projecting it to go down to 4.5% in 25-26. What is fiscal deficit and how does it affect our lives per se?
Good. See, when we talk about fiscal deficit, that becomes the important component of the budget. Fiscal deficit, broadly, we can say, shows how much government is falling short of in terms of generating revenue. So when there is a gap between revenue and expenditure, you get deficit. But fiscal deficit are of different types. There can be budgetary deficit, revenue deficit, primary deficit, fiscal deficit. And why fiscal deficit is so important? Fiscal deficit will indicate how much is the amount which government is going to borrow. So borrowing of the government depends on the fiscal deficit. And therefore, every time the first part of the budget which normally is the fiscal deficit amount. Increased fiscal deficit clearly shows that government is going to borrow. And there are serious implications always relating to fiscal deficit. And therefore, government passed Fiscal Responsibility Act where it was decided that this fiscal deficit should not cross a limit of 3.5%. But every year we have been observing that government could not fulfill this condition of fiscal deficit. Now, basically, one has to understand that why this fiscal deficit increase creates problem for the economy. Higher fiscal deficit takes place because government has some committed expenditure in terms of revenue expenditure. And this budget has clearly showed that there is going to be increased capital expenditure, and that is about from 37.70 lakh crore in 2021-22 to rupees 39.45 lakh crore. That is what government is planning to spend. Obviously, from where this money can be generated? One of the important sources is, of course, tax. There can be non-tax revenue, like suppose you are visiting Qutub Minar and other places, whatever the fees collected by the government, that becomes non-tax revenue. But this tax revenue, though it has increased, it is not adequate enough to fulfill the committed expenditure regarding revenue and some capital expenditure which government is planning to make. So you have disinvestment, another important source, but unfortunately disinvestment targets were also government could not achieve except Air India disinvestment. LIC they tried, but yet you don't have the LIC's privatization, it is in the process. And therefore, some amount you get from disinvestment, some amount you can get from monetization of assets. But unfortunately, even monetization of assets, which was planned in the last year's budget, government could not fulfill the particular target. And therefore, you find in this budget about 6.4% fiscal deficit is worrisome in a sense because this is going to be the borrowing of the government. And remember one thing, whenever borrowing takes place, government has to pay the rate of interest. So if you see the interest amount even of the last year, it is quite worrisome because borrowings are crossing a particular limit. And let me tell you, borrowing is about 90% of your GDP. And if it is 90% of your GDP, how much rate of interest you are going to pay? And if you see the component of the expenditure of the government, then you would find that rate of interest is actually taking a big amount of the government. It is about 23.23%, that was 21-22 out of the total expenditure. And that, I would say, is the highest expenditure of the government in terms of interest payment. And therefore, what I am trying to tell you, that whenever there is increase in fiscal deficit, borrowings go up, rate of interest goes up. And you ask me that what is the repercussion of this fiscal deficit. So one can understand the link. Fiscal deficit leads to borrowing. When you borrow, interest rate goes up. And when interest rate goes up, the worst thing which happens, that private investment, there is crowding out of private investment. That crowding out takes place because it becomes difficult for the private investors to borrow now, because rate of interest is rising, because government is also becoming the part of the total borrowing process, and that affects the rate of interest. And therefore, the solution you find in this budget is to have the capex, capital expenditure, which would be undertaken by the government, not by the private investment. So the expectation is that when you borrow and when you spend that money for capital expenditure in terms of developing infrastructure facilities, then that infrastructure will encourage private investors to come forward and to make investment. And therefore, it's a long-term solution to the problem, but government is trying to have that capital expenditure now, which is quite a good amount of money that government is going to spend. But when you do that, you find that it has a link with the fiscal deficit, it has a link with the rate of interest, and then in the long run, we are expecting that there will be crowding in of private investment because of the capital expenditure. Crowding out has already taken place because rate of interest has crossed some limit, and therefore you find that investments are not coming up to the extent you are expecting. And on one hand, you have the inflationary problem. On the other hand, you have borrowings. Rate of interest is becoming the major part of the total expenditure, and that is affecting the private investment. And then because consumption, private consumption is not picking up, you find that investment is not increasing to the extent required. And the last point which I would like to make, that there are certain sectors in the economy which are most important sector from the point of view of linkages. And those linkages are to be seen. If automobile sector grows, you find that economy grows fast. Construction sector, if it shows rising trend, you find that overall economy, it gets boosted up. And therefore, these two sectors are important. What is the indicator for measuring the increased amount of private consumption? You would notice that in automobile sector, four-wheelers demand is rising, but two-wheelers demand is going down. And that shows that people having lower levels of incomes are not in a position to spend adequate amount of money in the market, and that is actually the worrisome issue. The kind of inequalities which we talked about gets reflected in number of sectoral performances of the economy. And one of the indicators is your automobile sector, how it is making progress, which particular component of automobile sector's demand is rising in the economy, and there you find that four-wheelers demand is quite good, but there is a problem relating to what they call it as entry point demand in the automobile sector, that is two-wheelers demand. And that is how borrowings and other aspects need to be considered, which gets reflected in the fiscal deficit. Thank you so much. If you need further clarification, that can be done later on. Thank you.
Sir, I'll repeat this once again because it's a long chain. So we are saying that fiscal deficit means increased fiscal deficit means increased borrowing by the government. We have a limited pool of money, domestic pool of money. So out of that pool, if a major chunk is taken away by the government, then limited amount or lesser amount will be available for the private people, that is private sector. They will obviously, since a major chunk has gone to the government, a lot of people are fighting for limited amount. As a result of that, the rate of interest goes up. And if the rate of interest goes up, then obviously consumption also falls. There is a connection between higher interest rate and consumption, which is inversely related. So the consumption also falls. And then we are actually moving into a downward trend. The economy is moving into downward trend. Private people are not wanting to invest more. The reason is number one, higher interest rate, and number two, lower consumption. So that is not bringing in more of investments. Ultimately, sir, what we are getting it is that we are moving into a downward trend, or we were moving in a downward trend. But given the current scenario, especially the GST collection for the previous month at 1.42 lakh crore rupees, so this tells us that at least now we are coming out of that vicious cycle. We have started to move up, I believe. Sir, am I correct?
You're absolutely right, Prashant. Actually, you have explained better than me. And the another just one point is relating to borrowing. It is actually 3 times what government used to borrow earlier, and that is because of emphasis on capital expenditure. It is for hard infrastructure as well as for soft infrastructure also, and that is the kind of strategy which government has adopted. And there you find direct messaging by the government that this is what they are going to do. So good part of the government is transparency in terms of what they are going to do relating to this expenditure. So there is direct messaging and there is efficient delivery which we can expect, and that would help us to have the higher growth rate, higher consumption, and higher investment. But out of the total GDP's component, the major emphasis is on government expenditure, not on private investment or not on your private consumption also. Thank you.
So we, sorry, we can just hope and believe that the government capital expenditure in long run will help us generate more and more revenue, as well as will bring in private investment.
Right.
Sir, Rahul sir, now from moving from economy towards income tax, I want to ask you that there is no change in tax structure. So has anything changed for the common man of the country?
That's a very interesting question. See, if you ask me to name a couple of surprises that the finance minister gave in the budget, there were 3 very prominent departure from the conventions. The first departure was, I'm not talking of the budget, but of the economic survey, which is supposed to be a document which lists out the statistics of the economy and then gives recommendation to the government. And it's an independent economic advisor, the chief economic advisor, and the team is supposed to be independent team giving advice to the government. It's for the government to take it or not to take it. But they do give very constructive advices. This year, there was no recommendation part. It was only statistical part. So that was a departure. Second departure was the finance minister's speech is supposed to give a detail of the outlays on various schemes that the finance minister has announced as a part of the speech. They are there in the budget document. Of course, I and Deshpande sir can go in and dig into the document to find out what has happened. But when it comes to informing the people who take interest in the budget, and everybody takes interest in the budget in our country, we found that there was no much discussion on what kind of capital outlay has been laid for various activities that the finance minister has announced. So that was second departure. Third departure was that taxation is usually a larger part of budget. Part B of the speech, as it is called, is usually a large part where a lot is discussed about taxes, middle class especially, and the upper middle class, and the salaried class, and the working professionals, and businessmen, and small business. And everybody is keen to find out how budget affects me personally. So this time, direct taxes was only a 90-second discussion in the finance minister's speech, and indirect taxes was also less than 90-second discussion. So I was wondering that, like you said, same way, I think we left with an impression that there is not much to be changed or to propose to be changed in the budget. When I looked into the budget document, my God, there were 241 pages of direct taxes, and an equally large number of pages devoted to customs and GST. Though GST is formally not a part of the budgetary process because GST Council keeps deciding on the rates and other things during the year, many times during the year. This year, there was a substantial amount of amendments proposed in the direct taxes which were not spoken about at all with the finance minister. So that was quite surprising. And then the expectation of the middle class, again, I'll come to the point. Deshpande sir talked about a large capital outlay being made by the central government on the infrastructure. I talked about the positivity in the economy. A lot of positive things are happening. Prashantji, you talked about GST collection being very high. The fact remains that in spite of these rosy statistics and great picture that has been posted of the economy, which is true, I don't doubt the statistics. The fact remains that the divergence and the gap between the rich and the poor is so wide now that while as Sanjay ji said, $2,000 is the average per capita income of an average Indian. The problem is that while it could be like 1,50,000 or 1,30,000 could be a per capita income of an average Indian, we need to understand that this average is so deceptive. The fact that top 5% hold 80%, 70% of the economy, and bottom 30% hold virtually nothing of the economy. So they are, I mean, how many people around you who are unskilled workers and skilled workers and your maid and your driver, how many of them are getting about 10,000 or 15,000 rupees per annum, per month? Can you imagine? There are people who are surviving it, and this is the urban scenario. In the villages, it could be very, very bad also. So even that per capita statistics is deceptive. The bottom of the pyramid is worst affected at this point in time. Small businesses have closed down. Informal economy is virtually closed down. People working in repair shop and small restaurants and hotels and dhabas, they are left with no jobs. So in that scenario, it's such a bad situation out there that even if the statistics are good, GST collection is high, GST collection pertains more to the formal economy. The fact remains that the informal economy has not grown at all. It's in a bad shape. It is dwindling. The reduced consumption and the fact that, as Deshpande sir said, the people are not able to buy the scooters, entry-level vehicle, which is an aspiration of every Indian to first buy a motorized vehicle as soon as he can. So they're not able to do that. Things are really bad on the ground. So while economy grows, certain components of the economy, which constitute 90% of the economy in a country, does not grow. So there is a big disparity that is happening. Statistics, so it has to come down to that. The lower consumption is also a reflection of the fact that almost 90% of the economy is down. Very, very funny explanation was given by Chief Economic Advisor to what Deshpande sir said about the scooters demand being low. He said, the Chief Economic Advisor said that the cars demand is high, but because of the semiconductor shortage, we are not able to fulfill the demand. Well, it's a pent-up demand, and it's high certainly because the higher income bracket has risen. The problem with the lower interest, and he said that the scooter sale is demand is lower because people are waiting for EVs to come, battery or operated scooters to come, so that they can replace their present scooter with that. This looks like a very crazy and a very weird kind of explanation. How many people in the villages would know what is a EV and where are you going to have the charging stations? And so somebody sitting in a I'll come back to the
Rahul sir.
Yeah, please.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Sir, Phadke sir has to leave in few minutes. So if you allow me, can I ask him?
Please,
then we can continue with that.
Then we go to the taxation provisions. Yeah, perfect.
Yes, sir. Phadke sir, we have talked about the budget 2022 has talked about introduction of digital rupee using blockchain technology by RBI. So I'll ask all the questions that are targeted to you by the students together. So from number one, from employment and entrepreneurship perspective, how can today's student benefit from the current change? That is the first and foremost question. The second one is what kind of impact can we expect?
if you don't mind, can we take it one by one because I'm likely to forget otherwise.
No, sir, I'll remind you that. Okay, number one is from
Yeah.
employment and entrepreneurship perspective, what students can expect or how students can benefit from today's current change.
Sure. So you talked about digital currency first. I think just to clarify, digital currency or a central bank digital currency, as it's more formally called, is like a note, currency note that we have in our pocket, but a digital equivalent of it. And that's very different from, let's say, a UPI or a account in a wallet, because that is a liability of a bank or the payment service provider, versus the rupee note, which is directly the uh, liability of the central bank or the government. So the idea is to make the digital rupee as commonplace as the physical rupee, right? And that can give rise to a lot of changes, a lot of hopefully lower cost and higher speed transfers of goods and services, which are facilitated by this digital revolution that we are all in. And now coming to how can students be benefited, I think this is probably one of the best times for students to be graduating or to be learning. In my view, I would have been really happy to leave where we are right now, because there are so many big changes which are going on at this point of time. Large tectonic shifts in technology, which just take a simple example. 20 years back, the largest companies in the world were all industrial companies. They were like oil companies. They were like large banks globally. Today, the largest companies are all tech companies. If you see the top 10 companies in the world, they'll all be tech companies. One, two, three, four, five, six, all the way, pretty much. So that kind of shows what has really happened in the power of technology. And one of the big things about technology is that it's a big leveler. So once you are on the, let's say, one particular platform, everybody is at the same level. There is no differentiation. There is no, stratification in terms of I'm part of this club versus somebody else is not part of that club. Once you are on the same platform, whether you are, like Tejinder Singh ji said, there is a huge income disparity. How do you reduce that? One of the ways is to make sure that everybody has access to the same basic fundamental means of, whatever business, production, learning, health, etc. Right? So how does that become commonplace? That's where technology really helps. And I think the biggest benefit for students can be if they can become creators in this economy, right? And this is not the age really for them to think about how can I get a government job, and nothing wrong with government job, or how can I get a safe corporate job, etc., etc. I think this is really the age to dream and age to do different things, because what is worked in the past is not going to work in the future. Um, Again, taking another simple example, right? I mean, we talked about this two-wheelers to EVs. I mean, that's another example of a very large change that's coming, and maybe we are at that middle point of a V of that in some sense. But take whether it's hard engineering, whether it's software, whether it's content creation. You can just be a YouTuber and make far more money than being an MBA, for example, and so on, right? So opportunities are just mind blowing. The budget has not banned crypto assets. They've called it virtual digital assets, and in a way, I think they're trying to say that we don't want to ban innovation. Basically, we want to try and figure out ways to make things from whether it's cryptography or whether it's distributed ledger, whether it's blockchain, whether it's advanced sensors, 5G, IoT, all of these things are coming, and they're already there, and they're coming even more. So students have they're in a lucky position if they just take one idea and take it global. Now the world is your sort of playground. It's not really Nagpur or Maharashtra or whatever. You could be the next billionaire sitting out of wherever you are, right in your home actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Another question is that since we are now, it's a step taken by the government, as you have mentioned, that they have not banned cryptocurrency. So they are trying to figure out how to manage it, or maybe how to control it, or how to regulate it. I think that would be a better word. The question is that what kind of impact can we expect in the banking industry?
Yeah. So I think it's a bit early to have banks being affected by all this. There's right now more of a, more of a somewhat of additional investment avenue is how people probably might want to look at it. Uh, there is this whole theory about banks and then decentralized blockchains, which become the new intermediaries, etc., etc. But I think that takes a very long time. That takes probably 10, 20 years. So I think in the meanwhile, banks who are actually far better off, and you see a very big difference between public sector banks and private sector banks. And private sector banks have again, just soared in value in last 10 years compared to public sector banks, which were quite large, and they're still quite large in terms of assets, in terms of presence across, all maybe even small villages and so on and so forth. But in terms of market value, the private sector banks are quite large because they've kept pace with technology, and as long as they keep doing that, they could in fact turn some of these newer initiatives to their advantage in the next, say, 5 years.
So how do we see these pieces of technology going towards rural areas? Because as you have said, that public sector banks are huge banks, and they take a lot of time and effort to actually turn around or to do something new. And unfortunately, we do not have much presence of private banks in rural areas. They are catered to only by the public sector banks. So how will we be able to achieve the target of financial inclusion? Like, we talk about financial inclusion every time, whether it is budget or whether it is during the year. So how will we be able to achieve that target?
Yeah, so I don't think bank branches is really a limiting factor for financial inclusion anymore, right? I mean, essentially, with the mobile, what you have in your hand is effectively a bank branch, right? And with 5G and others, I mean, already we have data speeds in India in most places which are quite good. People consume social media, and I was just looking at a recent, a market survey which talked about Bharat, which is generally referred to as India 2, or the rural India, actually is a bigger user of many of these things than so-called urban India. So I think there is no real differentiation anymore in terms of urban, rural. I think everybody has access to a basic phone or a basic, obviously a non-smartphone. Pretty much everybody would have. Your mates will have probably two as well. A smartphone which has data as well, maybe slight bit of luxury, but even that's pretty much getting standardized. What that means is that your bank becomes in your pocket or in your phone, and that becomes a vehicle for financial inclusion. Of course, you need right applications, right? You need to be able to figure out how a farmer sitting in, let's say, rural Buldana, with a crop that is not very very stable because of the weather issues, because of the rain issues, etc. How does his life change, or his or her life changes with technology, right? So can we make of crop insurance, which automatically pays based on the weather? There is satellite, there is drones, and so on. And how do we kind of make that whole system come together such that if there is an adverse event in weather, automatically the farmer gets paid by insurance, for example, right? So how would all this come about is by really action by interested parties. It could be the next big, sort of unicorn that could be doing this idea, and it's really our creativity and our ability to think through the solutions, starting from scratch, starting from first principles, that really matters in this age. And again, students are at an advantage there.
So I believe you're talking about uh, technology being used for assessing the level of damage that climate change or similar things. I think you're talking about that also.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a field, right? Let's take a cotton farmer. Now, cotton farmer, let's say there is there's some weather, there is a failure of the rain, and that's why there has been no crop, for example, or there is excess crop for whatever reason, right? So there are both these scenarios. Now, financial inclusion would mean that in the event that there is too much crop, you should be able to sell it at a good price and not have to sort of put those. I think it was tomatoes or something which were put on the road, right, and so on.
Roadside, right.
Right. So you don't have
Tomatoes and
that
pumpkins.
situation. Yeah, correct. Or on the other hand, there is a failure, and then you have nothing, and then you need insurance to pay out so that you don't get into the hands of money lenders and so on and so forth. So that's really financial inclusion at the brass tacks, right, that we are talking about. So that's what will require, as I was just saying, if you imagine a situation where the same farm, the data for the rainfall is centrally available, right? You have satellites which anyway have that data. Now, there are private agencies which provide meteorological data as well. Connect that data, connect that for the particular land parcel, which will have a unique land identification number, and then you can actually track that data over a period of time. You can find the soil quality based on soil databases and so on, and then you can figure out if the reason why the crop has not happened is because of failure of weather. Then that automatically translates into something called a smart contract, which is nothing but an automated set of programs that can run. That if this happens, then that happens. So failure of crop leads to insurance payment. Nobody needs to go check. No greasing up farms. Nothing. You just automatically have payment in your account on your phone, right? As a farmer. And in the other event, when you have too much, then you have an ability. If there are ways to connect to marketplaces, not just in India but all over the world, then that extra production in the good situation does not have to be put on to the streets. It can actually be sold at even better prices because you have more production. So all of these are solutions which need to be crafted. I think it's time that we start thinking more about the solutions rather than what only the government can do and so on. I think the government can set the infrastructure, can set the rails, can set the payment rails, can provide the digital identity tax. The GST, which we talked about multiple times, is a phenomenal digital tax initiative, one of the best in the world. So I think rest is really the people and the creativity, and of course with government's help that can happen.
So we understand that digitization actually transformed the world, and now the major transformation that's there in the offing is, I think, in the agriculture sector.
I mean, I'm just taking agriculture as an example because that's like one of the more, all of us would want to make sure that our farmers, especially the marginal ones, don't have hard times. And you guys are in Vidarbha, and Vidarbha has been bearing the brunt of that, right, in some sense.
Correct.
So
Correct.
the solutions, whatever we talk about, inclusion, technology, etc., have really got to work at that level. So I was just taking that as an example, but transportation, education, healthcare, I think you can say every sector that needs
every primary need can be taken care of by the technology.
It can be improved. I mean, yeah, not taken care of, but at least improved and provided equal access to everybody by technology. Yeah.
So that will help us reduce the gap between you can say the facilities that are available. I'm not going to talk
everybody
about
will have equal opportunities.
Yes,
equal
opportunities can be given to all.
Correct. Then it's up to people. I mean, obviously, if you don't want to work, you want to sit doing nothing and so on, then you can't expect. You don't want to go back to the socialist era, right? But if you want to work, then you should get the ability to get learning, to get, let's say, means of production, and then the market access and financing capital. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much
Thanks.
for
I'm
being
sorry. I
part.
have to. Yeah, I have to probably go off this now, but I'm happy to sort of chat up with the students separately as well, and we can do a separate chat
Sure,
at
we'll
some
do
point
that,
of
sir.
time if
We'll
there is
arrange for that.
interest.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thanks.
sir.
Thank you, and thanks.
Nice meeting you. Though virtually we have been for
Yeah.
some time. Nice meeting.
Yeah, pleasure it was.
Same here. Thank you so much. Nice meeting you too.
Thank you, sir. So, Rahul sir, coming back to the
Taxation.
basic question, taxation. Has anything changed for the common man?
Yeah. See, when it comes to taxation, there has been no rejigging of the slabs and all other things that everybody very eagerly look forwards to, and everybody wants to know what has affected me directly or indirectly in the taxes. So there has been no rejigging, which is okay. But given the fact that the salaried middle class and middle class in general has suffered badly, every family in India, perhaps the medical expenditure rose considerably because of
Correct.
corona, and lots of family lost their dear ones also, and after a lot of medical expenditure, the infrastructure had collapsed, and you had to spend a lot of money just to for the basic treatment. It was such a bad situation. So I was expecting some kind of a measure coming this year as a crisis management, or as a as a as a replacement of what additional expenditure people were required to do, so that your take home pay is higher. It did not come, so there was no change. There was no higher taxes, which is a good thing, but there were no lower taxes either, which we wanted to happen this year. So that was the major change that did not happen. Other than that, there have been a lot many changes in the tax provisions. Very quickly, I would just sum up a few of them which could be relevant for the students and for all of us. Number one, there has been a major change regarding revision of tax returns. Earlier, the period was about 5, 6, 7 months, depending upon when the return was filed and the end of the financial year. Now, there would be a 2 years period for revision in case you discover some items have been left out from your return of income. But it comes with a heavy cost, depending on when you are revising. So it's a 2 years period. Depending upon when you are revising, your additional taxes would be, so you'll have to calculate the taxes and the interest payable till the date of revision, and there would be an additional 25% or 50% taxes depending upon when you're revising. So when you let's say your tax liability was 50,000 rupees on this additional amount, interest was 20,000 rupees, 30,000 rupees. So 80,000 is the total liability on which you'll be paying either 20,000 or 40,000 is additional taxes, and your return could be revised. So the provision comes into the law book, but with a heavy penalty, with a heavy taxation that you will have to bear. Corporate surcharge has been reduced from 12% to 7%. Minimum alternative taxation on cooperative societies has been reduced to 15%. It was on corporate, it was 15%. Cooperative society, it was 23 or 24%, 23%, I think. That has now come down to 15%. So I think it's a major thing. Unfortunately, Vidarbha cooperative movement has not been very successful. I was like Western Maharashtra benefits a lot because of that. The sugar lobby and the cotton belt and other things. I would wish that, my wishful thinking that this lower rate of taxes could perhaps propel and motivate some people to get into cooperative. We would love to see cooperative movement getting more better results in our region, which unfortunately has not been so. So this perhaps could be a slight impetus for people who want to get into this. About cryptos, discussion has already taken place. I would very quickly tell about crypto taxation. Number one, let me clarify that this does not legalize crypto. It's a misconception we are talking about. Crypto bill is already pending is expected to come in the parliament sometimes later. Let me explain the canons of taxation, the basic principles of taxation. We have chartered accountants as your faculties here, and they can also guide you on that. See, if you have made a profit, it is taxable. So the fact that government has proposed a 30% tax on digital assets does not mean that it's a legitimization of the digital asset. It only means that if you have made a profit, you will pay 30% taxes on that. So it's very, very clear whether crypto is legal or illegal or valid or invalid or whatever would come later in a separate bill in the parliament. It is not a part of the finance bill. The finance minister is not bothered about legality. Finance minister is bothered about taxability. If you have made a profit, pay 30% of that as taxes without any deduction for any expenditure that you have incurred. Of course, the cost of crypto that you have, the purchase price minus sale price, on which you pay 30% taxes. This is a new provision which has come up. Of course, in a way, a slight legitimacy is given to it from the because of the fact that the government is talking of taxing it. So I have an asset, I can declare and pay taxes on it. So to that extent, it becomes one level up in a way, but it does not legitimize. So it was very interesting to see when the finance minister announced a 30% taxation, the crypto actually rose. Bitcoin suddenly got up, rose by 20, 10 or 15% because of the fact that the government is recognizing the asset, at least in a way, indirectly though. Let me disclaim, this does not mean that the legality has been established. 1% TDS on crypto transfers has been introduced in the bill. So if I buy and sell, I will have to deduct taxes, even if I am not into business. So private transactions between me and Prashant sir would also entail 1% TDS and 30% tax also on the profit that I make because of that. So this is a major thing that has come up. Then some schemes for central government, state government employees has come up. One interesting provision that has come up, which is commendable and which is very good, is the annuity paid by the parent or the guardian on the income, on the life of a dependent disabled person used to get a tax relief. It was exempt from tax when the money was received after the death of the proposer. Now they say when the proposer turns 60, after that, even if the annuity is received during the life of the proposer, after he turns 60, this would still be exempt from tax. So this is a good social measure that has been done. A very interesting provision that I would like to discuss here and conclude the taxation part, because we're running out of time, is about a new provision which says that certain business expenditures would not be eligible for deduction under Section 37. The expenditure, there is a clear law which says that anything which is in contravention of a law, of any law or law of the land, if that expenditure is paid by the business, it is not eligible for deduction. So, if I pay a bribe to an officer, to an income tax officer, let's say, that bribe is not tax deductible. This is a settled law. Now a specific scenario which the government was facing. Pharma companies pay a lot of kickbacks and lot of money to the medical practitioners, so that as an incentive, so that they can recommend or refer their medicine. There was no law banning this. The doctors who were prescribing the medicine were a part of the code of medical ethics, which says that they cannot take a gift from any pharmaceutical company for prescribing a medicine, so the recipient was not a part of, was ethically bound not to do that. Pharmaceutical companies were giving gifts to the doctors and claiming this as a business expenditure because they were not bound by this provision, professional ethics, So for them, it was clear. For me, this is an expenditure which I have incurred for promoting my business. So it should be eligible. So under Section 37, this was being allowed by many of the high courts as an eligible deduction. So this was defeating the purpose. The doctor was getting the benefit, though ethically wrong for him. The company was paying it and claiming it as a business expenditure. So the law has now been reversed to say that the business expenditure which is incurred by a company or by a business would not be eligible for deduction if the recipient of the expenditure is also legally not permitted to take that amount. A wonderful change, is going to be far-reaching, but it's going to be difficult in certain situations. I'm giving the medical example because this was the example on which the law was based. But now I will have to find out whether the recipient is legally bound, legally allowed to collect this money or not. If he's legally allowed, then only this is going to become an expenditure on me. And one last provision, which is very, very weird and shows how the government keeps talking about reducing compliance burden. 20,000 compliances have been reduced, 1,800 legislations have been repealed, but this is where things go wrong. One amendment that has been proposed is, for last many years, lot of businesses were taking deduction of the amount of education surcharge and other surcharge paid by them as a part of the income tax. Income tax consists of the basic taxation and some surcharges for higher education, for health. All these, it was held by the courts all over the country, many of the courts, that this additional surcharge is for a specific purpose. It's for health infrastructure of the country or for educational infrastructure of the country. So this is not actually income tax, but money that you have paid for a particular cause. So the courts were holding that this is going to be a deductible tax expenditure. The government has reversed this decision. So many high courts were held that this was a legitimate business expenditure deductible. Now the government has reversed this, saying that this will not be a business expenditure, and not only reverse this from today, reverse this from 2005. So imagine if I paid some taxes, claimed it as a deduction, High Court has allowed me, and now the law is amended back from 2005. So this is going to be disallowed. All cases would be reopened, and there would be a lot of litigation involved. And imagine what happens to the dignity of the High Court, which had ruled that this was a deductible expenditure. Now the government has, the bureaucrats have not bureaucrats, the parliament, I would say, has reversed the judgment that those courts had passed. So their judgment is also nullified. So these are the provisions that hurt you badly. Retrospective amendment. We don't have much time to discuss that, but retrospective amendment means a breach of trust. It means that you are required to open the accounts again, get into the litigation again, and do lots of things. So these, and in spite of all the promises that the government had made recently in Vodafone judgment that you would recall, and the Keynes judgment internationally, that they would not be retrospectively amending the law. This particular retrospective amendment was something that is going to be a pain in the neck for lot of assessees and gives a bad picture. Very quickly about the crypto thing, about the crypto rupee thing. Just one word about that. Crypto rupee would mean a reduction in the cost of issue of rupee. More than that, I mean, that's the only benefit that we're going to have. Otherwise, it's no different from Bharat Pay and other UPI apps for us. It's electronic transaction. The only difference that it is going to make, which is a major difference, is that it shows to the world that India is at the front line of the IT revolution that is taking place in the world. We have created a digital currency. China created it last year. We are doing it now. So we are at the forefront of IT revolution, and we are the IT powerhouse of the world. So I think that was a major message that the government wanted to give to the world, and so came out with the digital rupee. I think enough on taxation, Prashantji.
Thank you, sir. You have comprehensively covered the taxation part. All the provisions that I was thinking of asking you have already covered. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
But so far as retrospective taxation is concerned, it has played havoc. Earlier also, the Vodafone case was the biggest example. But fortunately, they realized and they stopped doing that. But again, as you are saying, retrospective taxation, again, this thing, it's going to cause a lot of litigation. A lot of advocates are going to get benefit of it. Every situation has two sides, so somebody is definitely going to take benefit of it.
Right, but which is bad in the long run.
But this is bad. This is bad for the economy. This is bad actually for the image of the country as well.
True.
That's true. But one thing you said, sir, and that is that although we have mention of taxation on crypto assets, that is virtual digital assets, but this budget is not saying that it is legal. That's true. Now I'm asking Vinayak sir, because I'm going to come back with one question to Rahul sir, but I'm asking Vinayak sir, has not government silently welcomed investments in crypto?
Actually, what I feel about cryptocurrency and the taxes relating to crypto, in fact, government was trying to ban crypto, and they were for banning crypto actually. But somehow yet that process is not completed. In the meantime, what government did, government tried to discourage people
by imposing 30% tax, so that they should not go for crypto. So they are indirectly discouraging people, but as pointed out by Rahul Saab, actually crypto has to be regulated, and it is not yet regulated in that sense. Another important point which needs to be kept in mind, that crypto is not digital currency. It is not a digital currency. Any currency which is injected in the system has to be regulated by RBI. And RBI is the only authority which can issue any kind of currency. So crypto is an asset, it is not a currency. So students must remember this. And because it is not a currency, it is not regulated by RBI also. Otherwise, whatever currency, money supply that take place in the system, that is to be regulated, because rate of inflation, expenditure, so many issues are centered around this particular currency business. And therefore, one has to remember that when we talk about imposition of tax on crypto, it is imposition of tax on crypto assets, not on cryptocurrency. And it is actually government is trying to ban it, because it is like a matka kind of thing. It's not a regular activity which people do, and therefore there was a move that government tried to ban it. But now by imposing this tax, government expects that people will be discouraged to have that kind of currency, that kind of asset transactions. This is, I think, relating to cryptocurrency, and it will be harmful to the economy. That is what I feel, because
Rahul
of
sir,
several reasons.
Rahul sir, as sir has mentioned, actually he has already given the answer to the question that I wanted to ask you. He has said that it's kind of matka, and then he has said that it's not good for the economy as well. And one more thing Vinayak sir has said, and that is imposing 30% taxation would is intended to reduce the transactions in crypto. The question that I wanted to ask was that the rate of tax is 30% on cryptographic tokens and non-fungible tokens, etc. Lottery income and income from horse races, these are taxed at a rate of 30%. So it means that we are actually equating digital assets, that is virtual VDAs, with horse racing. The question is, has horse racing stopped, or has it declined by imposing 30% tax?
Right, right. A very interesting question. Last 4 years, I have been lecturing all over the country on the risk that crypto assets have for the economy. And I've been telling people that it has no intrinsic value. So when people ask me what's the right value of Bitcoin, I say ZERO. ZERO is the value, and it has to come down to the value, that value sooner or later. It cannot be 1 paisa more than that value. It has to be that. But it has, because of circulation and because of the fact it's a matka, he rightly said, but this matka is very robust in the sense that it's technologically driven. It's very strong technology that is supporting it. And it's matka would normally close. We call it bucket shop closing. This matka does not close because there are enough number of people buying and selling. So it keeps on rolling. The bubble keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you don't know where it's going to stop because technology is robust in that, and it's foolproof, so to say. So it's a perfect example of a matka which has become technologically driven, foolproof, and with all a lot of players who keep coming in. I know many of the students sitting here are already buying cryptos and making money out of that. In spite of all the discouragement that we people do. So the fact remains that this keeps getting bigger and bigger, and so big it is that no government in the world is at the moment taking the risk of causing a total collapse of crypto assets. Huge money is involved. The economies are going to collapse because of the collapse of crypto assets. So I think that is the dilemma the government is facing. It's already grown too big. A lot of politician money, a lot of scam money, a lot of gray market money, everything is gone into that. And this 30% is not going to be a deterrent, as you rightly said, is not going to be a deterrent, because if I made people have made huge money on cryptos, so paying off 30% would not be a major deterrent to them. The need to regulate crypto, I would have loved crypto being banned, but would not happen, I know. So need to regulate cryptos, need to have a KYC. Crypto is the best source for all the gray market transaction, दो नंबर का business के लिए, हवाला transactions के लिए, for dark web के लिए. I think we all people understand what is dark web. All dark web transactions are being done on cryptos. You can buy narcotics, you can buy drugs, you can do every nefarious activity using cryptos, because it's not the log doesn't go to the government, it's not traceable. So with this, it has become a kind of a parallel economy which is growing bigger and bigger and threatening the very existence of the ecosystem, because its collapse could mean a disaster. So I think the government will have to tread in cautiously, and I will be very happy that in the long run the government comes down to a level where cryptos ultimately gradually get out of become a part of the history. Blockchain is the beautiful technology, wonderful technology that will survive, that has to survive. There are hundreds of applications of blockchain that we are going to see in the future, but crypto, I ultimately would see the demise of cryptos someday in future. I cannot say sooner or later, but much later, perhaps someday in future. Until then, we'll have to bear with it. If you want to make short-term profits, do it at your peril. People are making money out of it, but know that this is pure speculation. This is nothing more than casino, because it does not have any intrinsic value. Government, if I steal somebody from somebody's house, or if I earn some illegal income, that is a settled law that is put to tax at the maximum marginal rate. So 30% tax is the maximum marginal rate.
That's why Rawal Sahab, isme they have not allowed any deductions also.
Yeah, there no deduction, because
they are not allowed deduction.
अगर मैं चोरी करके कुछ लाता हूँ और कहता हूँ कि मैं चोरी करने के लिए मैंने जो मेहनत की थी उसका डिडक्शन मुझे मिलना चाहिए, so same way it is equated to that kind of asset. And as Prashant ji rightly said, horse races and winning from lotteries and everything would fall in the same category. So I would be very eager to see what regulation comes in, and a regulation on crypto is going to have. We have the largest number of investors in India, in the whole world. When it comes to crypto investing, investment per person may be lower, but number of investors is highest in India. And Prashant ji rightly said, the government has allowed the ecosystem to grow, right under their nose, without and just keeping silent, and let it grow. So it's going to be a huge thing. India banning crypto or India regulating crypto is going to have a ripple effect all over the world, in the world of crypto, and the world economy also is likely to be affected. So I think that is the dilemma that the government is facing, and that is the dilemma they will have to resolve before this bubble becomes so big that it bursts and crashes many economies in the world. Right.
Thank you, sir. Actually, there are a lot of things that we wanted to discuss. For example, the ECLGS scheme, for example, the PLI, but we are running short of time. So let's do one thing. Let's ask the students to directly pose the questions. We have one more TS sir here, like you are TS Rawal, CA TS Rawal. So we have one TS with us, Trivendra Sharma. So he is representing the students, and he's going to ask the questions. Trivendra, you can start, please. Before that, thank you, Trivendra. But before that, I want to thank the team of the students, Trivendra and Achal, Harshal, Pooja, I think Kritika, Jogi, and I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yes. So, sir, my first question is on behalf of students. I want to ask some questions. Sir, the first question is government action of increasing tax exemption for startup by one more year is reasonable. Since India aims to be a 5 trillion economy, shouldn't it provide more incentives and promote entrepreneurship?
Do I answer this, Prashant ji?
Yeah.
Do I answer?
Go ahead.
Okay. Number one, the fact that the government is talking of regulating and creating the standards for VCs is something that I liked. VCs have their own way of doing things. So that was one thing that I was happy about, that the government is considering standardizing the procedure that venture funding will have to follow in future. So it's another recognition of the fact that that the startup ecosystem in India is big, and we have so much of unicorns and so many of unicorns being added every year, and a good startup network. And in fact, I was anticipating that during this year, the foreign flow of angel investors and VCs to India is going to exceed the amount of money that FDI brings in. FDI is in the traditional industry. This is the startup infrastructure, the angel investing and other things. So the world is recognizing India's contribution to the startup world, no doubt about that. And this has grown in spite of the government support. There was zero support from the government, and people evolved. People came out with ideas, and investors came out with money. So it has worked very well even without the support of the government. What is needed is a good platform and a good support from the government. So I think this regulation of the VCs, laying down the procedure for them, extending the tax benefit. I'm sure this tax benefit they would keep continue doing it, extending it by one more year for next year also. So I think, and interestingly, the young entrepreneurs who are coming out and coming out with business ideas and tapping the money are least concerned about the impediments that the government has caused. The fact that there is not much ease of doing business in a country has not deterred these people from getting into it and successfully doing things. So whatever comes in from the government is welcome. Even if it doesn't come in, it should not affect us badly. We have a robust ecosystem now for the startups to work.
See, only one point I would like to make, that as far as this venture capital and startup is concerned, we have to find out, Rahul Saab, how many are really genuine startups. You will find that those who are already in the business, they are actually starting some company on fresh name and deriving the benefit of whatever government is offering. And startups started by some new engineering graduates, you find that the rate of failure is quite high in that case. And therefore, we have to identify, and there has to be some mechanism to find out that how many are really genuine startups, where we are expecting that these young people would become entrepreneur. That is what is expecting out of this whole provisions which are met.
Right.
But
So that's
in
why
reality, you find that those who are already in business, in order to take the benefits, they are starting some new ventures.
That is right. Whenever there is a government concession or a benefit, out of 10 people who take benefit, there would be 4 who misuse the provision.
Correct.
So that's why I say this ecosystem is developing on its own without any support from the government, which is a good thing. And this is a formidable network now in a country. So let government do whatever good they can do. Let's keep doing our things the way we are doing things, and it's working out fine. I can see a good ecosystem existing in Ramdev Baba College, where good startups are being incubated. So I'm very happy about this development, and let's forget what government gives. Let's keep working on our own.
Correct.
And develop things on our own. Right? You're right, Vinex, on that. Right? Certainly. Yeah, Trivendra.
So, sir, my next question is: the government has slashed the target for privatization to rupees 78,000 crore, and the next year's estimate at 65,000 crore. How are we looking at LIC IPO and BPCL privatization?
Yeah, Vinex, you want to say, or I would whatever? Huh?
See, when disinvestment targets are set, if you see the previous budgets, hardly you find that government has succeeded in achieving the target. Disinvestment is always ongoing process. So suppose you are deciding a specific target in a budget, it cannot be completed in that particular year. So I would say that there is a problem relating to the process of disinvestment itself. Like LIC IPO, yet they could not come out with it. Last year it was announced, and they say that it is in the process. Air India recently they could complete it. Therefore, when disinvestment targets are set, you can't expect that that will be done in that particular financial year. And therefore, that process takes longer period of time in order to complete the whole process of disinvestment. and strategic disinvestment method which is adopted by this government is still difficult because you have to identify those, and then that takes a lot of time. So I would say that setting target is good, and then many a times people criticize that last year's disinvestment target was very high, but this year's disinvestment target they have reduced. The reason being that in that particular period of time they could not complete the process of disinvestment, and therefore you find variations in the last year's target and this year's target. This is related
Yeah,
to this.
very quickly, I'll add to this also. I heard the secretary responsible for disinvestment this morning. He said that the the IPO of LIC is going to come before March for sure. They have all the approvals. So if that comes in, it's going to be the mother of all IPOs. It's going to be the biggest IPO ever in the history of the country and perhaps in the world. So they have that in the pipeline. Secondly, this will to supplement what Vinayak sir said, this investment was not too much of a priority in a year when tax buoyancy is high, when foreign exchange reserve is unprecedented. We have so much of money, so it can wait. Uh, Cash flow is not a major problem here. So and the problem is lots of logistics go into it. LIC is the jewel, the Kohinoor of the government of India. So it's going to take some time for the procedures to happen. Shipping Corporation of India, they are already doing it. Air India, they have already done it. So as he said, it's erratic. But if and then next year the government is also planning to get into 5G spectrum auction, which is going to give them a lot of money. So as long as you keep money from these IPOs can follow the regular route. Okay.
Yes, sir. So, sir, what is the future of digital education in India, and how will we achieve the inclusion for all when it comes to education?
Yeah, again, something very close to my heart. And when
See,
actually, if you want to
they have
say
been
that,
observing over a period of time. And about, I will just finish it in a few minutes.
So
When we
both of us
talk about digitalization, particularly in the education sector, we have been observing that how this digitalization is becoming popular. But our experience shows that you can't entirely rely on this kind of system for a longer period of time. There has to be some kind of blended approach where you have offline, online going on simultaneously. It will take a lot of time to understand the whole process, because the experience clearly shows that students, they consider that online examination would be the best solution to evaluate them, but we know what type of problems we are facing relating to online examination. And if at all we want to go for it, I feel lot of training programs need to be introduced for the teachers regarding how to set the papers, how we can have open book system. And if these are in place, then I would say that your this kind of online examination and online education system, that would be good for assessment and other kind of process. As far as the pandemic is concerned, there is this alternative. It's a good alternative, but that cannot be continued for a longer period of time unless you create that kind of ecosystem where students are coming to the college. And the purpose of college and school is not just to have the teaching and learning, social relationship, social contact. You are trying to understand others, how to understand others. That also you are learning from these colleges and institutes. And therefore, I feel that entirely, if we follow this process on a longer basis, then I think that can be detrimental for the overall education system itself.
yeah, that's perfect. And very quickly, do I add? Do I have time? Otherwise, I can skip also.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the divide between Bharat and India is phenomenal because of the pandemic. While you people, like, you are lucky that your students were able to study and connect, log into platforms and being able to touch with the, being were able to be in touch with the teachers and with the faculties and the classroom teaching. Rural India has washed out last 2 years completely. It was a complete washout. Last 2 years, they did not study at all. Just imagine the plight of a aspiring farmer's son in a village who wants to be a graduate and find a good job in the city. And last 2 years, he does not have the data and the means and the smartphone to be able to study. Even if he has the data and the means, his school does not have. The teacher is not competent to deliver it online. So it has been a complete washout. Absolutely, the gap between Bharat and India is so wide now that it's conspicuous. It's very easily seen. So this divide has to be filled in some time. The finance minister talked a lot about digitization of education and TV channels and a lot of other means of reaching out to people, and of course optical fiber network that is being created for the villages where data could reach. These are commendable things. I would have expected a lot of outlay on these. Unfortunately, the outlay on education during this year remains same as last year. So while there is a good talk being made, a lot of good talk being made about intention and about policy, it does not seem to be, in the budget, it is numbers that matter to me. So numbers do not speak the truth that I would have expected to speak. I would have expected a lot of additional allocation on education so that the regional university that the government is speaking about, the digitization of education at the rural and the grassroots level that the government is speaking about would become a reality. And unless we create a physical infrastructure in rural areas or we are able to reach out to people digitally, this the gap between educated of the city, elite of the city, lucky people that we are, and the masses that Bharat represents is going to be big. So I think on this I am dissatisfied with the efforts of the government, certainly.
सर वो स्टूडेंट्स को आपने यदि बोला ना कि कैमरा शुरू कर दो, तो 2-3 बार ऐसा हुआ कि वो बोल रहे थे कि हम पेड़ पे बैठ के सुन रहे हैं।
हाँ सर, क्योंकि सिग्नल वहां मिलता है,
आती नहीं है,
सिग्नल वहां मिलता है पेड़ के ऊपर बेचारे को,
और वहां दिखाया उसने एक दिन मुझे।
राइट। सो बहुत
दिस इज द प्रॉब्लम ऑफ डिजिटल डिवाइड।
बिल्कुल। और दूसरा क्या हुआ है कि किसी स्टूडेंट के पास में जिसको स्मार्टफोन का एक्सेस नहीं था, फैमिली फोन उसके पास है अब, तो फैमिली के जो बाकी बिजनेस का जरिया था वो भी खत्म हो गया, क्योंकि फोन उसके पास में है, और वो फोन से वो कितना पढ़ाई कर रहा है और कितना कुछ और कर रहा है ये उनको मालूम नहीं है, और बेचारा मतलब सो दिस इज अ ग्राउंड रियलिटी इन द लोअर सेगमेंट ऑफ द सोसाइटी which needs to be addressed if we want digital divide to be to be over and to be and then education to reach people through digitization.
Okay, sir. Sir, you have touched most of the questions that we wanted to ask, and we are running short of time, so we will conclude this session. Now, I would like to now call
Trivendra. Do I have? Can I ask one question? I have one question in mind for both the panelists.
Yes,
please go ahead.
Sure.
Please allow me. I know that we are short of time, but these guys come together only once a year.
Right.
So it's like celebrating Lodi. So let us continue for another 10 minutes.
Right. So you have every right to keep us captive.
Sir, the question is that we say. We started also like this only, that it's a good sign that January 2022 GST collection was more than 1.40 lakh crore. So it's I think it's 1.42 trillion we can call it.
Yeah.
January 2020, that is just prior to COVID. That month also we had GST collection of about 1.38 lakh crore. Considering inflation, probably we have not yet touched January 2020 GST collection in real terms. Despite this, okay, we are saying that we have almost reached the pre-COVID levels. Forget about these 2 years. These 2 years were just for sustaining our, we can say our existence, our livelihoods. That is okay. But when we look at stock market, we have barely touched pre-COVID levels now, after 2 years, after 24 months, but our stock markets are trading at about 1.5 times pre-COVID levels. And it has, in fact, gone beyond 1.5 times. Now it is slightly below 1.5 times. So what is the reason for this? And I want both of you to answer.
Yeah. So do I go ahead and answer first?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Like I am a student of stock market for more than 3 decades, and I know that stock market, while could be a barometer of the economy, it's a very faulty barometer. It in the short run, it really goes crazy. There is a lot of irrational exuberance that always prevails in the stock market, and people, it's stock market prices are not in the short term a reflection of the efficient market hypothesis, so to say, or of the true state of the economy. In the long run, it can hover around the true economy. I mean, it can go up and down the over economy. It's expected to follow the line of the true economy in a very long period of time. In the short term, it is the perception of the people, the flow of money, that causes the demand and supply to determine the prices. So I do not really place much value on the optimism of the stock market or the pessimism of the stock market. When things go bad, they get so pessimistic that there is a bloodbath in the market. When things slightly start looking better, it's euphoric. So stock market is somebody who suffers from a bipolar disorder. It suddenly gets into a optimistic mood, suddenly gets into a pessimistic mood, but I have a faith in the fact that in the long run it hovers around that. So don't consider this uprise to be the right direction that the economy is following. And I always say that the fact that there are thousands of players in the stock market who want to buy things. So I may be an inefficient player, I may be a speculator, I may be a short-term trader, I may be a intraday trader, I may be a long-term investor. So putting together all these, consolidating them, and thinking that this is what Adam Smith's model of the economy is. No, it's not so. So combining all averages of people of different expectation does not make it the real reflection of the economy. So don't I don't put much value on that, at least. Vinayak sir.
As far as gross GST collection is concerned, it is about 1.41 lakh crore. And this is, I think, highest since the inception of GST. How we look at this increase, in spite of the fact that capacity utilization is not up to the mark, what I feel that this requires detailed analysis relating to the consumption pattern. If you see the consumption pattern, overall you would realize that upper income groups, their consumption pattern is altogether different. And what we have been observing over a period of time, because of increased inequalities, higher income brackets, there the kind of consumption pattern is for the luxurious goods, where you find that GST collection, 18% GST collection, that has captured mainly because of increased level of income of the higher income brackets. But as far as we have seen that lower income groups, they are not in a position to have that kind of consumption basket. And therefore, that consumption pattern, I feel, is important to understand in order to see how the GST collection is rising. And the another important contribution, I would say, is the GST Council, where you have states chief ministers. States also played major role in order to have this kind of collection, where in many states they could not their GST collection and the returns. Maharashtra government is crying for that. So many states are in trouble, but in spite of that, overall GST collection, you find that is picking up. The reason could be, I think, I have not yet studied that aspect, but consumption pattern could be one of the important aspects that needs to be studied.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Rahul sir. Thank you, Deshpande sir, for answering the query. Chavendra, you can take it forward now. Thank you so much. Chavendra? Achal, Travendra's video is, I think it's frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen, looks like, yeah.
Yes, sir. 1 minute.
Achal, please take over.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Arthashastra every year has been the source for the student to understand the union budget in detail and to gain the expert's outlook on its implications. We hope that even this year it serves its purpose on behalf of the Student Development Cell DMT RCOM. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guests Dr. Vinayak Deshpande, CATS Rawal and Sanjay Phadke sir. The critical analysis by Dr. Vinayak Deshpande sir, the positivity that T.S. Rawal sir envisioned and the role of fintech in future economy explained by Mr. Sanjay Phadke sir has given us clear picture about what to expect. I would also like to extend sincere thanks to the head of department Dr. Rupesh Pius and SGC faculty coordinator Dr. Sunita Dhote for being our guiding source in organization of this event. I will also like to thank CA Prashant sir who handled the event throughout. Also, I would like to thank all the members of the team SGC for their active involvement. Finally, I would like to thank all of you who have joined us live on YouTube today. We hope that the Arthashastra has added to your knowledge about the union budget. I hope that this budget will add to the Indian growth story and will help us in achieving the $5 trillion economy mark till 2024. With this hope, I bid adieu. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
and
you,
wish
sir.
you all the best, students. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pius sir. Nice meeting you. Yeah, भेटूया पुन्हा. Okay, Prashant. Thank you.
Thank you,
Nice.
sir. Thank you so much.